And welcome back to WAAAGH Tactics. We're here to talk about the downfall of the Green Tide. So everybody, it looks like Orks have started to struggle again in Pariah Nexus. Is it again, or has this just been a reflection of our current state, right? A lot of people are in a lot of different mindsets here of how Orks are and what they're doing. So we're going to take some time to look at the stats and the facts like always. We'll take a look at the faction versus faction, a few good performing lists that I want to look at. And of course, we do these every Wednesday, so we have a nice, good idea of what the meta looks like as a whole, right? So, yeah. So instead of it being just things we think, it can be actually things we can prove because it's been a repetitive cycle of us paying attention to this. So before we get into that, let's go with our sponsor, Baron of Dice, which help us do our paint competition. Shout out to Baron of Dice. There's a 5% discount in our description because nobody likes taxes. So shout out to Baron of Dice for that beautiful, high-quality orc dice that I highly recommend you guys use. So that being said, let's look at stats. Here we have Meta Monday's breakdown for how the Orks are doing. So we have Orcs sitting at a 40% win rate. Only 10 players this weekend. It wasn't really that active of a weekend. A lot of people know that. But that's kind of how it's going to also look like for Orcs. There's not really a lot of people there anymore. A lot of people jumped off them. They see them as a complicated, kind of hard learning curve army. Bit random with the outcomes it's going to get. And we typically just have some hard matchups, some kind of predators. So instead of playing us, which would be considered a pressure army, which is known to be, the style that Orks fall under would be pressure melee army. That's known to be good in Nexus, but why Orks don't benefit from that being good is because other people do it better for cheaper and faster and more reliable outcomes, right? So we have War Horde 40% chillin'. And then there's a couple Dread Mob and a couple Green Tide players that were there. Okay. I just want to kind of show what Meta Monday says as a whole, because this isn't just, I like that this becomes known to the whole community, and that orc players kind of feel like, don't worry guys, we're not left high and dry. It seems like people are noticing. So we have Meta Monday saying Orcs have fallen far this data slate. With only 10 players, they had a 40% weekend win rate and 0 top placings. They are the 4th worst faction overall in the last 5 weeks with a 44% win rate overall. So when we says the 4th, guys, from what I understand by looking at it, we have it's 4th, but with some conjecture, right? Because there's Deathwatch below us as pretty much the worst, but Deathwatch isn't a real faction, right? Because now we know the Agents of the Imperium exist. Next is basic Space Marines, but vanilla Space Marines are the poster boy entry-level army. It's always going to have a horrible representation. Some of the best players in the world can play normal Space Marines, and just a basic dude that has almost his just homemade brewed clan that plays with sorry Marines, homemade brewed chapter, just plays whatever he wants. They're always going to have kind of like an odd, non-reliable win rate. So Space Marines being below us isn't really that, odd. They don't really count almost to a certain degree. Vanilla Space Marines, right? And then GSC is the next one below us, right? Because if we're 4th worst according to him, those are the 3 below us. So it's Deathwatch, which isn't a real faction, Space Marines, vanilla, which are kind of like the poster boy entry-level army of the whole game, and everybody recognized that. And then GSC, which is known to be the worst written codex to a point of needing almost a re-rate like Adamak did. So Orcs are sitting right there above pretty much those 3 armies, which one of those not even being real. So we're pretty much in the bottom 3 armies of 40K, and I still don't think you should really disparage as an orc player. The reason that is because these are the times where you should be learning the basics and playing your style and what detachment you like most. And that's why we're here to kind of show you different ways you can play those different detachments, how people have had success. That way you're not sitting high and dry on your creativity ladder, wondering if you're going to run into walls, right? So let's look at the faction versus factions. As I always like to do is look at the faction. Yeah, Eric, exactly. Sad trombone. Wah, wah, wah. So I like to look at the faction versus faction because it shows us kind of our predators, maybe some things you should kind of look into if you're going to attend an RTT or a GT. That way you can kind of know their rules and know what things to kind of be problematic for you, and maybe understand why they could be problematic for you. That could pretty much help you, especially if you're like in a league or something and you see one of these matchups. So in the faction versus faction, you have the start date of 6/24, end date 7/31. We have Orks, and this I just so you guys know this is from, is Goonhammer. It shows Leagues of Voltan being our hardest matchup, followed by Death Guard, Drakari, all sitting at pretty much 36% here between these three, 35, 36%. So those would be your top three by an actual distinction. There's Deathwatch here, but Deathwatch doesn't exist anymore in our mind because Agents of the Imperium. Then you have Space Wolves, Blood Angels, and Tyranids as the next ones. As is this really surprising anybody based off we already knew the Space Wolves were already pretty good, and the only things that could hold them in place were either certain bully boys or green titleists, and when you lose kind of those strong out answers to them, they become a quite difficult matchup as they can take the initiative of you. Blood Angels as well. Tyranids have a boatload of actually difficult answers for Orks. They give us difficult questions because they have answers for all of our things. They have high toughness for cheap per point. They have great multi-damage profiles. Their AP is just enough that it gets through us. Great for trading. They score secondary as well. They're fast. They can screen us with certain units easily. Tyranid is just battle shock is an actual problem for Orks. The fact that they can kind of actually chat out the warp does matter. They're neural lictors, being able to make you take battle shock tests and then adding -+1 to wound onto you is pretty rough as an Ork player. Then you have Necrons. I think Necrons, it's flipping over to our side. It's funny because if you looked at this in the beginning of Index, we were smashing down Necrons. Even once they got their Codex, we kind of did all right still with our Index for a little bit. Now you see, because I'm going to say it's not only because we lost, Squig Hog Boys, because I'm saying in comparison to Index Hammer, even Orks going into Codex Necrons, we had answers. The reason why I think that's pretty much changed is because not just because of Squigs, because Squigs were obviously a direct answer to a lot of Necrons, but a lot of the things that kind of went back to Necron's favor is Nexus, having secret missions, having a lot of the secondary missions change where you want to drop into people's deployment zones is kind of in their favor as well. So in some ways, Necrons have kind of swung that because they can either skew into weird dumb things like triple monoliths still to this day, and now we lack answers for them because monolith would be one of the things that could one-shot that to gain respect as an Ork player. But then B, they score secondaries way better than us now in Nexus, and they can kind of ignore primary and kill us down if maybe they're playing like a Doomstalker build with Catans. And so Necrons have more answers and ways to beat us, and that's not really surprising me either. Adeptus Custodes, Adeptus Sororitas, T-Suns, Tau, these are all armies that actually we used to either have winning matchups into or pretty solid. It's really much falling into the enemy's favor for all of a multitude of different reasons. For these three factions, it's pretty much just damage output. And then for the Adeptus Sororitas level reasoning is because they have a lot of units, a lot of reliable outcomes with their miracle dives, a lot of reliable damage into us. Into all of our detachments, all of our elite units. They pretty much pick them up as well, just like T-Suns do. Tau, we require you to have the skill to understand how to take out Tau if you're an Ork player and play on proper terrain, which some people simply don't. And then you just look at these other matchups. I mean, even as Astra Militarum, which isn't even doing that good right now. World Eater, Astra Militarum is kind of like us, right? Where they're represented by the real learning curve and skill gap that there are in the lower end of the player base and the higher end. Then you have World Eaters, kind of like Astra Militarum and Orks, right? And then we sit okay into Imperial Knights, Chaos, some Black Templars, basic Marines, Dark Angels. It shows us. But if you look at the other end, we have maybe 5 or 6 favorable matchups, and then we just have a boatload between our top 3, which Leagues of Voltan, Death Guard, and Drakari, just dog walk us at 33%. That's not good. Leagues of Voltan have a good amount of damage output, really odd toughness with their tough transports 10 and T6 units. And they're getting more shenanigans with our infiltrators. So that's something that we have to pay attention to, that a lot of people are trying to play the mid-table, something Death Guard can do with their Nurglings and still do, not just stacking defensive buffs with them. Infiltrating is just a factor, and then Drakari, a bunch of Dark Lances, and all the right tools to kill us. So what can we do as Orc players to counter all these things? Or do we not care, or do we really worry about doing our own thing and not worry about trying to counter all these things? Because that's more of what it's looking like to me is when you get into the conundrum of there's so many different ways that we could lose and so many different skews and matchups and things that we can lose. I think it comes down to you focusing on how you want to perform and implementing your game plan, and then coming with the best offensive, potential that way. People tend to go, well, there's a lot of tough things. I need everything to take that out. Oh, there's a lot of 3-inch deep strike. Okay, I need a stuff to screen that out too. You end up running out of tools, and that's pretty much what happens to us currently as Orcs. Is it takes very specific niche tools, combos, and units to deal with different, niche and or even just common data sheets. Let's say Chaos Baby Knight spam, right? Orcs don't really have units that trade out well with them. If you're talking about a beast boss with beast stagger boys, you're not really doing great into killing them per point when you're trying to get a trade out of there. So Orc players, you're winning by implementing your game plan, and that's really what it's coming down to. You're gonna have to go into events, leagues, or games going, hey, Orcs are a pressure build army, a pressure melee army that's good for Nexus. How can I take advantage of what we have to be good at? Going back to the fundamentals and basics is how you're actually going to win your games. That's why in these downtimes, when you're actually a bad, faction, it's best that you play what you want to play, the units you want to play, getting familiar with them, the detachments you want to favor. You don't know if that when GW decides to touch us, good touch, and fix us, if they end up looking at the detachment you're playing. Let's say you really like Def Dreads and Killicans, and GW decides, you know what, we don't really want to switch Mega Knobs because we hate them. Let's just touch something else and make them good. You never know if something becomes really good and that you've been practicing with and refining. Therefore, you should just take the time as an Orc player to just play the detachments and the factions that you want to play in these down times, because the fundamentals are how you're gonna win. If you're not looking to straight up spam certain data sheets and hope to just outstat people, then you're just going to have to outplay people. And sometimes when both you guys are evenly played, then it comes down to your lack of data sheet tools or just flexibility as an army, and you just get run over, lose, kill, lost. And that's totally fine. That's kind of like the nature of Warhammer 40K. So I really think that people shouldn't take it so serious and be so downstraught. Of course, this video's title is Why Are Orcs Struggling? We're struggling because we lack a variety of tools. We lack any kind of reliable shooting outside of really Dread Bob and maybe a couple flash kits. Sometimes it's not even really reliable that way. We lack good trading units, skirmishes, durability, and just flexibility with some of our detachments and where units really want to end up, right? You don't really see too much flexibility in this case. But in today's list, I'm hoping to kind of shake that up, because some of the lists that we actually get to look into today did end up coming outside of the box and playing some really different setups. So hello everybody, and how's everybody doing? Let me say hello to chat real quick, because I see you guys are up in here. Get a bunch of whoa, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, we're a good scrap. Maz still popping up in list, or is the Beast Boss and Squigosaur better? Maz actually is preferred most of the time if you're just taking one Beast Best. One Squig Squig Boss type model. If you're taking one big brick of Squig Hollow Boys, you're more likely to see Maz. His just potential and the fact that it's something that we actually lack, which is multi-damage, makes him just more like as a better choice that way. He's a bit more durable. That way when the Squigs do die, which they will die, he's a solo killer by himself. And his ability to fight on death, kind of like fill up a strat in that way, is a bit more useful. So all in all, he just provides more value as a leader, and people tend to just pay a little bit more for Maz just for the potential spiking. Got to be back to the fundamentals. Movement win games. Yeah, it really does. And this is where you kind of really have to exemplify that when your faction is down and out and one of the weaker factions. You have to get kind of back to the basics and really learning just the mission play and scoring and working on that. He says, the Pariah Nexus tournament companion Peter has been useful to me. I point out at the people that buildings cover 20%, 24% of the table and have 12% line of sight blocking runes. Yeah, they're pretty dense tables. People tend to forget that. And then showing a list. I want to try Grot Spam and Dread Mob. Hey man, we seen someone that did that last week. We covered a list that had a different kind of Grot Spam. So that being said, we're going to talk about one of the lists that I wanted to go over today. So we have Jonathan Serbert. So Jonathan was actually at the grand tournament at the Tacoma Open. This is where they had the Orc player. Sorry, I'm scrounging all the way up to the top so you guys can see. Grand tournament at the U.S. Open at Tacoma. This is where they had Marshall Peters, this guy, the Orc guy that cheated and then, whatever, yellow carded. And then he ended up forfeiting the ticket that he got from winning this event. So, that's good on him for doing what people would consider the right thing. That's pretty cool. But this was another Orc player at this event that had a really interesting list that I really wanted to go into. So let's give a look and shout out to my boy. Where did I put him? I was just right here, Jonathan Serber. So let's take a look at that Jonathan Serber's list real quick, because this is a different kind of combined arms / versatile tool list that we really just don't get to see, especially in War Horde, where there's actually a lot of weird stuff going on in here. One thing that I said that we lack is kind of shooting, combined arms, small skirmish units, MSU units become very, very useful in this meta, Pariah Nexus as a whole this season, and Orcs kind of lack a lot of that right now, and we're not doing it really well. So let's see, we have a War Horde list, but that actually has some combined arms shooting potential, right? He called it the Evergreen WAAAGH. So we have a Beast Boss on foot, still great value. I think this is the best place for him, War Horde that being. We have a Big Mac with shock attack gun in a War Horde list, right? We all know about this in the Dread Mob, but what about in a actual War Horde list? Then we have a Boss Snickrop, a Gazgul Thraka, a War Boss with Follow Me Lads, and then a Weird Boy, followed by the Battle Line units, which is one 10-man unit of Beast Snagga boys and one 20-man unit of boys. So that's where I'm assuming the War Boss and the Weird Boy goes, and then the Beast Boss goes with the 10-man unit of Snaggas. 2 trucks, 1 battle wagon, a Copta unit with all rockets. Tell me what you guys like to run on your Coptas, if you like custom Booster Blaster when you can bring it or not, or if you like to stick to your Copta rockets. And it's really cool that he actually ended up bringing that. A lot of people sleep on the Coptas, don't bring them. I think it's weird that GW took an AP away from them, and I'm still kind of not over that. Like, GW, why would you make them AP 0? It was actually very useful in their AP 1. Make them a little bit more versatile in that way. But people just don't seem to bring them. I think they're pretty cool. Not good for offensive output, but they actually survive, and they could actually survive doing a secondary for you. So that's kind of cool for that. A flash kit unit, 10-man unit of flash kits. Woo! People always ask me how I feel about 10-man units of flash kits. I'll just say what it is. I like 2 5-mans and then a 10-man if I decide to go for the 20. But if I'm just bringing 10, I tend to break that into 2 5-man units. They simply don't really catch my attention for a stratagem type unit, because I tend to want my flash kits to just kind of jump out in their 5-man units. They have really big bases, get the lines of sight to shoot, got pop, sustain, and lethal, and then there's a chance they might just die after that. So I'm not really looking to use them for Overwatch, but it is an option. And if you're just, War Horde, they can actually fight pretty good. So they become interesting. Maybe if you even want to hard as nails to keep them alive, if it's a 10-man unit. But to answer the question, I like 2 5s. Easier to get my lines of sight for each 5-man unit, right? Then we have 3 10-man units of Gretchen, followed by a Luda unit. Oop, my little logo got in the way of that. Sorry, guys. The Luda unit has 2 rockets for the 2 spanners, a Mega Knob unit, 3 of them with twin kill saws, and then 3 Stormboy units. So here you can see we paid the extra points to have 3 units of 3 mans of Mega Knobs with the Gazgul Thraka. I do think that third one does give a good amount of durability that you do find useful, because just having 2 of them makes them very easy to kind of work around, do some damage to him, throw a grenade at Makari, take away the bodyguards, and then just selectively try to kill Gaz, or throw a grenade at Makari after you kill both Mega Knobs, and you're like, I could just get rid of him so you don't get a wall banner. So I do think paying for the third Meganom does increase the durability enough to be warranted a lot of the time. Not always. Sometimes you really just got to pay for the 2 Meganobs. But if you could fit that third Meganob in there, it could really, really help you in different scenarios. Maybe even getting in combat a little easier, stuff like that. It does keep it like a 5-man unit, so you don't have to worry about cohesion as bad either. It's not like it becomes a 6-man or something weird. And then 3 Stormboy units. It's funny because I didn't do this all the time before, and I haven't done it in a while, and it's very circumstantial. I can't always recommend this, but I have been using my Stormboys, especially if you're playing Warhorde, to actually run out and advance and charge onto small units a bit more often than I used to. I've always done it against Eldar and stuff like that, but I'm using it more in Nexus, considering that people can't do actions just because they're eligible to shoot. So if I tag something more often, just to stop it from falling back and doing a secondary and all these different things that people don't want, can't do anymore because the restrictions to scoring secondaries, Stormboys become more interesting for that reason. So this list, the big characteristics of it: Yazgul Thraka, big unit of 20 boys, Beast Boss, Battle Wagon, 2 trucks, big brick of flash kits, Stormboys, and then a Luda Bomb. That Luda Bomb is something that's very interesting that you don't really get to see too often with the shock attack gun. In this kind of matchup, in this kind of list archetype, I would assume it is coming in from strategic reserves, come off a table edge when you're on an objective and shoot you. But there is some contention that you just want to put it in a truck so you can run over, look at an objective, jump out, shoot at the guys that are on the objective when that time comes. So it's a different look. And you tell me in the comments, do you find this even appealing, right? I'm a person that don't personally find the Death Copters too appealing. I already told you I would go for 5-man units and on the flash kits instead of a big brick. And bringing Ludas in something that isn't Dread Mob, therefore I'm not getting my sustained 6s to hit when shooting, makes Ludas quite a bit less appealing to me. On any turn that isn't on the objective and you're shooting with them, you're simply doing nothing. So do you guys think it's worth it, or would you rather just bring 10 more flash kits instead of Ludas and a shock attack gun? So you let me know what you think. That's kind of the first thing I thought, where I was like, if this is the case here, I might just go for 2 Luda bombs and not even bring the shock attack gun, not even bring the Ludas. Difference in that point cost, and at least I still get to appreciate the sustained 6s to hit. So that was my thoughts on his list. So let's go look at his actual matchups for John Sherber during this his run, because you can see my boy had, what is this, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games. That's what I thought. So he had 8 games where he went 6-2. So very respectable run, respectable scores all around. So let's take a look at my boys list run through, because this is is it not, guys? A weird combined arms. Tell me how many of you are using your Ludas in your Warhorde list, with your Death Copters and 3 units of Stormboys. Sorry about that, guys. So first matchup, we have a Adeptus Custodes list. Adeptus Custodes are one of those matchups, guys, where the missions are really, really important. And you understanding how to kind of tempo the game out is really important. So we have 3 units of Blade Champions, 1 Shield Captain with Dawn Eagle Jetbike with enhancements from the Halls of Armoris. We have 1, 2, 3 Guardian units. All of them have just the Guardian Spears. Okay, just making sure we're not busting out 4 wound guys, right? Guardian Spears, 1 unit of Warden, 3 units of Warden, all with the Spears as well. Prosecutors, and then Lord Inquisitor Draxus. I like this list in the not way that, good for us in that case for the most part. What I mean is what I like this list is when they go a lot of infantry spam, kind of like 3 Wardens, 3 battle line units with the Inquisitor. That's a straight up Custoda archetype that you could be aware of and kind of build towards and understand that you have to play against. Each Blade Champion is really good for killing Orc characters. Getting in direct fights with them isn't really ideal in this case as well. But the one thing they really do lack, and they do lack this for the most part, and it's always the matchup that you must be considerate of when you're an Orc player, is that Custodes struggle to get into you because you have transports. we have transports as the orc player, and that's something they just like. They have no long range shooting, no ability to kind of pop you. They have to just kind of tag you and bag you and hope that they can just beat you up. When you fall out, they kill you after in a different activation. Therefore, you get good staging potential, something that you're not really used to as an orc player, and you can kind of get the initiative in a different way. Allows you to kind of control the pace of the game and control your rate of attrition if you're understanding that your transports are the key to victory in this sort of matchup. As we look at my boys' list, right, you can see here that Def Coptas, though they are not ideally tough in this matchup, performing the threat to the Custo players for 100 points, I can kill a couple of you. But I'm really good at also getting your way, jumping into your backfield, flying. That's actually a kind of cool tech piece in this matchup that you could, for the most part, make work. Gazgul actually allows you to threaten certain units, like at least one of those Guardian units that's on the battlefield that you can appreciate. And this is where, like I asked you guys, do you think the shock attack can actually matter in this matchup with the Ludas, or would you have rather had a big unit of Flash Kits? Flash Kit can still do work in the Custodes if you can stop them from just straight up standing on objective, not subject, sorry. If you can stop them from getting the benefit of cover. So if somehow you could position your Flash Kits to, not let them get cover until the Custodes they shoot, then sure, they can mess them up. But for the most part, they kind of bounce, right? This unit of 20 boys having hard as nails actually has a chance that it might survive for a little bit, get in the way of the Custodes, being able to trade on objectives with them. This is a very, very much control the tempo and the pace game where you have to play cagey. And this is I believe my boy Jonathan just played well, because 73 points meant that he played cagey, wasn't going for a really high score, that he was really just trying to score as he could periodically, right? Not giving the Custodes the ability to charge you and kind of take up the space and close the distance with you is what you want to control as the orc player. You want to say, I got my transports, I have a small profile, you're not going to kill me with your little stupid spears. I'm going to move around and then go stand an objective here, score my secondary here, run away, get away from you over here, and then go to the other side of the table and score as well here. Deny your objective by just standing on it, not even charging you. That's how you take control of the orc game in that matchup. And transports are the way you do that, right? How you get to the objective to deny the primary on on their natural expansion objective is to simply take something that has good OC, stand on there, don't even fight them sometimes, and then deny them, score yours, go for your secondaries, kill their scoring units, kill just some of their guardians, and just let their wardens hang out in open space. But don't let them fill up every objective, guys, because that's when it's game over, when you try to go toe-to-toe with Custodes and you let them just kind of like stand with you, go toe-to-toe on the objectives. So then we have his second matchup. So he already started off good in a hard matchup right there, very respectable, right? But that's why his list, our boy Jonathan's list here, went unnoticed, because he didn't get the highest score. He's at like 5th, 43rd, 50th place for Tacoma, and he took 2 losses, but he actually has a pretty strong path to victory here. So in that second game, right away, he's going into Adeptus Sororitas with the Bringers of Flame. So already he's going into some hard matchups here again. We have the Canoness with Iron Surplus of Saint whatever. Canoness with Jump Pack with Fire and Fury. Morgan Fall and the Shrines of Saint Catherine. We have a Battle Sister squad. 2 emulators, very, very versatile, useful little dedicated transports. Castigator, Dominion squad, 3 mortifiers. Oh, sweet. That's pretty interesting. 1 unit of Paragon war suits for Morgan Vol, and then 1 big unit of Seraphim. Okay. So a lot of cross-firing support here between triple castigators and double immolators, right? He can get additional AP. I believe he can ignore cover on that. He can get a bunch of, obviously, melts us up to strength 10. Your heavy bolters can get up to strength 6. These are all very important thresholds when you're going into orcs. Actually having AP on something like a castigator cannon or having access into it because of an immolator really does make a difference. So this is again pretty potent kind of list that he's going into with the Sisters of Battle, you guys. Very respectable matchup that he's had to go into already, and what he's had to deal with, because this list these are the archetypes and kind of the winning things that people kind of ask for when they're looking at these sisters or custodes. So I kind of want to pull up this emulator to show you guys, because I feel like it's kind of a slept on unit sometimes for, newer orc players. I'm like, I swear he did something. So we do have, as I thought, let me swing this over to you, Gits. So you guys seeing it? Yes, you are. So we have an emulator sitting at T10. That's for a dedicated transport. So again, at a weird threshold. She has Purge and Cleanse. In your shooting phase, after this model has shot, select one unit that is hit by one or more of those attacks. Until the end of the phase, the enemy unit cannot have cover. So of course, right here, she can end up giving cover, taking away cover from a unit. And of course, she can always do miracle stuff and be nice and all miracled up, because she's a nice sister type unit. Morgan Vol goes hard to try to take Catherine, giving buffs out like movement buffs. I think she can feel no pains out. The Castigator having a strength 10 autocannon with damage 3. Overall, sisters have great damage potential into orcs and all the great profiles. Getting rid of this Custodes list. Profiles into orcs, and not even just orcs. I mean, dude, they do everything. It's everybody. But again, here's our boys list with 20 boys, wagon, trucks, flash kits, 3 units of Gretchen. I think those 3 units of Gretchen also came into factor against those Custodes players as well. Always know that put your grots forward in your Custodes list. Put them in your trucks if you have to. Sometimes jump out, standing on those objectives. It becomes very interesting and very annoying for them. So again, you can see that he had to go into some very, very meta, what people would call meta archetypal lists, with the Sisters of Battles of Bringers of Flame, with the crossfire of emulators, castigators, Dominion squads where they can actually break down. He has a bunch of mortifiers, so he has little skirmishing, and then he brings the Morgan Vol and the Triumph of St. Catherine. That's really all this Bringers of Flame list really is when it comes down to it, with all his damage potential into here. So again, he's showing that, one, he himself, Jonathan, is an excellent player. So shout out to you for figuring out that win as well. But he's going into very hard matches with something that I would consider a non-typical Orc Warhorde list. So now he goes in his third matchup, which we got to see what he actually ended up losing to right after already pulling it off against these weird hard matchups. So then his third matchup, he ends up losing into Chaos Demons. And you know what? That doesn't surprise me, because like I said, you kind of have all the tools for everything as an orc player right now. And something that we just simply struggle into is high toughness units. And I think my boy right here is Blake Kittrell said, I'm considering tank busters to see if I can make them work. And, I've keep looking back at stuff like that too. What I will say is they're weird, different profiles of pistols, one hammer, and then a rocket is really, really detrimental and really, really kind of annoying, to be honest. At best, you're going to get out and jump out and shoot and then hit them with the hammer. And that means you're losing access to one of your bomb squigs as well. Because on the actual Tank Busters data sheet, it also says that they can't use both of their bomb squigs at the same time. It specifically says for the Tank Busters that you have to use one at a time at the end of a normal move. So Tank Busters can't even, like, on the wall, you're not going to get out and charge with the hammer. You're going to get out once, shoot, use one bomb squig, and then maybe charge with your hammer. So, just saying, Tank Busters are in a weird position. I think they have to come down to like 80, 65 points for me to consider them, because they're just all over the place. But the reason you are looking at them is because the same reason why our boy here ended up losing to Demons is because we simply struggle into high toughness units, having to go punch every single tough thing on the battlefield in this kind of meta and this kind of game state is quite difficult. So we have a Bloodthirster, Renmaster of the Throne, Redmaster again, Scarbrand, Skullmaster, and then the Changeling. We have 1 unit of Bloodletters, 1 unit of 2 units of Blood Crushers, 2 units of flesh, 3 units of flesh hounds, excuse me, and a skull cannon. This list is actually quite potent. If you haven't played them before, Blood Crushers are what you can imagine as Squig Hog Boys. The difference is they have a 4-up invuln at all times. They're 4 wounds, and they actually do mortal wounds on the charge. So they hit a little less actual, like, offensively worse than Squigs, but they do mortal wounds, they charge. They're a bit different, more reliably durable. So this is really, really potent, especially because they can come in and do 6-inch deep strikes on you with demons and kind of just take you to that stat check land where orcs are really struggling. So like always, we always have a certain archetype that we struggle into as orcs right now, whether it's a strict 2+ armor save type of army, or if it's a strict big toughness army. And in this case, my boy lost to a high toughness army. Nothing to be ashamed of, even though demons are known for being a super potent army. The right demon player, and especially with, in my opinion, that corn build's really, really potent, just because they can take the initiative and just blow your orc units away and kick the crap out of you. You know, that's nothing to be ashamed of for losing, to be honest. That corn list is really, really solid. I would say if it had more blood crushers, it'd be even more solid. So let's look at his 4th matchup. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. He's going into another Sisters of Battle, Bringers of Flame again. So my boy has to go into Sisters, Custodes with max infantry spam, and then demons with corn. So let's look at this Sisters list. He has Morganval, Triumph of St. Catherine. Okay, so he doesn't bring the Canoness, the fighting Canoness, or the other support Canoness. Okay, but you're always going to see Morganval and the Triumph guys. Just be aware of them. Battle Sister Squad, again, double immolators like I showed you earlier. 2 castigators, a Dominion, another Dominion squad. If these girls can battle squad, combat squad, so they can break into small units. So one unit can have all the meltas and the other one has all the trash. Exorcist, another pretty solid gun platform, guys. And I believe they have indirect too. Then we have the Paragon Warsu, Seraphim, and Sisters Novitiates. In this matchup again, he did overcome them. The one thing about Sisters, in my opinion, especially if you're dealing with them, from what I've seen and what I've had to deal with, is pressure on Sisters of Battle is a big factor when you're going up to them as a orc player. If you just stay back and allow them to beat you up on damage, they will. You have to know that they are going to take their chunk of flesh out of you based off where you disembark from your transports, based off your staging areas, based off you having, how much control you're willing to have and how much little bit of screening they have on their list really doesn't matter, right? If you can start tagging these transports and shooting away, a Novitiate Sister squad, shooting away a Seraphim squad with your flash skits, shooting away these Dominion Sisters, you can really, really just pressure Sisters into their own deployment zone or their side of the table, and that really does become killing them, because even a diminished orc unit can take them out. Jonathan got 94 with this list. I think having flash kits, having Ludas actually, surprisingly, might have actually played a little bit of into that win. Even Beast Snaggle boys too, right? When you get on the wall with a couple Beast Snaggle boys, some of them are dead, but the rest aren't. Man, you're just picking Sisters up. It's kind of funny because Sisters can really just beat the crap out of a battle wagon, though. But it will take a lot of, crossfire, and it will take them all to kind of pile up. That's the last thing I want to say about Sisters too, is when you do go into this kind of sister archetype, understand where they have the castigators, immolators trying to crossfire each other, and they're getting those same angles of fire into your one battle wagon. Just know it's going to take several different activations from them. Sisters, the better the sister players a battle is, the more she'll know how to have different cross sections of fire and support fire from one thing to shoot a different target. And then, if she ends up blowing this up too early, she gets to do something else. That's fine. But all in all, what I'm saying is they'll be bunched up. So just know that once they take their pound of flesh out of you, it's very much behoove of you as an orc player to go touch those transports, those tanks as quickly as possible, because that's really your time to shine before they can spread out and then do it again and execute their big wombo combo killing. So if they're a bit too, scary, spooked, which they a lot of the time are as Sisters of Battle players, it's up to you as the orc player to just be pressure, take your lumps, and then get in there and punch them and get them stuck in. So great job to Jonathan, because it looks like he obviously did that. So let's take a look at his 5th game. he went into Luke with his Necrons Hypercrypt. It's funny because Warhorde actually can really handle Hypercrypt and Necrons as a whole, but it is a tough one. And yeah, so is Steve Goodrich. Yeah, sisters are a tough one. And our boy took out 2 sisters of battles already in like the first 5 rounds of the game. So that's of the event. So that's him. He had a hard win path or player path to victory. So he's going into Necrons here. He has double Chronomancers, 2 Catons, 1 the Nightbringer, 1 the Void Dragon, a Hexmark Destroyer, an Overlord, and a Scorpek Lord, followed by 2 units of Immortals, a Flayed one, Lich Guard, Monolith, and Scorpek Destroyer. Ooh, so here you can see one thing this guy definitely lacks is all the little stupid destroyers that can drop in your backfield. He doesn't have as many of the destroyers. Like you can have multiple of these Hexmark Destroyers. One of them's enough, I guess, in this case. But having a bunch of different units that can drop in your backfield and be really annoying with Hypercrypt is how you kind of pull Orks apart and constantly keep scoring. If they don't have this, if they're trying to stat check you with something like Catons, which Orks can actually deal with a lot of volume of 1, Destroyers, where we could take them down with fighting on death or just getting the initiative on them, leaving the Monolith not in a rage of something like a Gas, when Gas can just jump on it and do come into play. So as soon as that Necron player messes up, you know, he's gone. Just know these Immortals are very, very killing when it comes to the Chronopancers. They can get their crit 5 pluses. Very, very potent, but it's up to you as the Orc player to also be aware that these guys lack the ability to pop your transports again. Like I always say, that is a factor. So you're going into Custodes, you're going into Necrons, right? The Monolith can pop them maybe. But this 375 points to maybe pop one of your transports. When in reality, you know, he's going to have to pick it up and put it somewhere where he can pop it. That's where you should be set up so you can respond and pop him. You know what I'm saying? So linear movement is suggestion was the name of this list. Yes, it was Necron. And he ended up winning that one with the 78-point win. You can see he's getting into the big boy games here with his 5th battle round. Make sure that was 5th battle, right? Make sure I knocked that up. Yeah, he was against Luke. Yeah. Make sure I messed that up, guys. Sometimes I'd be getting all over the place. Now we have his 6th matchup, which he did end up losing this one. So this was his 2nd loss, which is his only other loss because he took 2. He went into Blood Angels. And I would say in this reason he lost, man, why he wouldn't lost right off the bat. Where your knobs, bro? Where your knobs? Huh? No, I'm just kidding. Not saying you have to bring knobs, but just typically, you bring knobs. So we have Blood Angels, Sons of Sanguinius. Very annoying, right, guys? Everybody knows that +2 strength, really makes a difference. Takes them to different thresholds. Their chainsaws get to strength 6, and their power fist to 10. Those are really important for Orcs. So we have a Captain, Chaplain with the jump pack, La Martis, and a Sanguinor. Interesting, he doesn't have the Priest, because the Priest give the 5 of feeling of him. So we have a Assault Intercessor squad. Like we said, because they're in Sons of Sanguinius, these guys get up to strength 6 with those chain swords. That's freaking sick for them. Sucks for us. We have an Impulsor, a Rhino. I think Impulsors are slept on, in my opinion. I don't think they're amazing, but I do think they're pretty solid. Impulsor, Rhino, Assault Intercessor with jump pack. He has 3 of those. Like we said, those guys can get up to strength 7 with their chainsaws. What? And they're putting their mortal wounds into you with their shoulder bumps. 1 5-man unit of Death Company Marines. Sorry, 2 of them. 2 units of Death Company Marines. Followed by 2 10-man units of Death Company with jump packs. 2 scout squads and a Cladius Assassin. Boy! Cladius Assassin in this case, she can actually position also, because the Blood Angels are the ones that can actually take the initiative from you. And when there's that one exchange where you want to fight on death, you want to unbridle carnage, you want to do all these things, you want to hard as nails, you just can't do all these different stacking abilities because of her on the one go turn. And he has a bunch of different units that are go turn between their jetpacks. And I do like that he has a couple of 5-man units of Death Company that are on foot. That's going inside these transports and stuff. All in all, there's a pretty tough and very potent Blood Angels list, right? He has scouts for his first turn screening, pre-deployment, stuff like that. And then he has the Sanguinor, Lamartis to be super killy, and then several captain support for all the different units. So overall, this is a very potent Blood Angels list. I think he does lack the tools. My boy Jonathan's list would lack the tools for this because he just has like a 20-man unit of boys that pretty much has to eat all those Assault Intercessor punches. Coptas aren't really killing anything. Flash kits are hopeful to kill something at least. In this case, you might want to hope to overwatch with them, but I wouldn't even recommend it. Ludas, if they don't stand on an objective, that's that one thing that against Blood Angels, you have that one potent turn where you call a wall, you get stuck in with the Blood Angels, game's over. And if they're not standing on an objective, your Ludas didn't do anything, they didn't participate at all to the game. And that's kind of how I would see that Blood Angels game going. You do kind of have the transports again, like I said, versus custodes or other armies that can't really pop your transports. They can be helpful to you, but if you can't take the initiative from the enemy just because of transports, because then it doesn't help you enough sometimes, especially on that go turn when the Clady Assassin can really mess you up. So shout out to him. 74-point loss isn't anything bad, but it is what it is. And then he has his 7th game. Yep. Ooh, we put up 100 there, boy. You guys seen that? Put up 100. Let's see what he put 100 on. 100 against Imperial Knights. Yeah, he was like, we're not having none of that. So he has the Knight Lancer. He has 1, 2, 3 Knight Lancers. Oh, this is skew hard. 2 Helverins, 2 Warglaves, Clady's Assassin. Boom. So pretty much Knights running up, trying to charge you, trying to get stuck in against fighting against a Warhorde list with gas. That's simply just not going to go their way. 100 points. That'll make you feel good on the comeback, right, guys? The skew got this far, so he was doing something right. He was running people over, just not going to run the Orks over into that. And then last but certainly not least, we have his last matchup with was Demons again. But this isn't Demons, Corn Demon spam. So let's see how it goes. You have Bloodthirster. He has a Demon Prince with wings. He has a Great Unclean One and a Red Master's Throne, followed by Nurglings, Plague Bearers, Beasts of Nurgles, 2 Blood Crushers, Flesh Hounds, and then 2 War Dog Brigands. The War Dog Brigands are there just because, like I said, people hate not being on the pop transports. In this case, having a lot of smaller units does help the Orc player. Just saying it, like Plague Bearers, and the Demon Prince with wings who are going to get involved, be a little bit easier to kill than having to kill several big corn great unclean, not great unclean ones, corn greater demons. The Great Unclean One can get killed in this actual matchup. The best way to kill him in this matchup is not that I would say you necessarily want to go into him because he does have the 4 of Feel No Pain, but if you can't delay him, block him off, for any of these demons, the best way to really kill them in this matchup would be when you do call wall and you get Unbridled Carnage and you take that 10-man unit of Beast Snagga Boys and you re-roll the hit roll. You fish for the lethals and the dev wounds in that case, to lethal 5+ in this case, and just volume out some of those greater demons. That'd be very, very helpful. I typically ignore the Great Unclean One if I can and kill everybody else. Once you do that, he's very slow and not really super killy. The Blood Crushers are the big issue here. Do not let them get that 6-inch deep charge off you, boy. But it seems like Jonathan learned from that one, got a 91-point win, so he learned from his last Demon's loss. Great job to Jonathan. Let's take a look at what I want to call a combined arms Blood Warhorde list, because he has a Beast Boss on foot, a Big Mac with Shock Attack Gun, Boss Snickrock, Gazgul Thraka, War Bosses Follow Me Lads, Weird Boy, a 10-man unit of Beast Snagga Boys, a 20-man unit of boys, 2 trucks, a battle wagon, 3 Def Copters with rockets, a 10-man unit of flash kits, 3 minimum size units of Grots, a 10-man unit of Ludas with rockets on the spanners, 3 Mega Knobs with twin kill sauce, and then 3 Storm Boy units. So love to see it. Great job to our boy Jonathan Serbert. So whoa for Jonathan. I really like that list. Combined arms, bringing Gaz back. Love to see it. Now let's go into this week's performing Orc player. We have my boy. Oh, and I didn't put his name on the actual list, so you guys can banish me for that. His name was Paul Martin. Let me show it right here. Boop. So Paul Martin. Shout out to Paul Martin. So Paul Martin and his Green Tide list. So Paul Martin was actually out this last weekend where the Orks had a 40% win rate, trying his green tide and take his green tide for a ride. He did go 2-2-1. So what I wouldn't say was, the most happy, run, because you typically want to win more than you lose, but you didn't really lose. You technically weren't beaten, so he's cool. Why I wanted to show this is because, one, it was green tide, which everybody seems to be asking about. Is it a dead detachment? Can I run it? Where does it look? And I think Paul's path is a perfect way to kind of scale it. So for his green tide list, he called it "You'd Add Better Have Guns." I like how you calling it that. So he has a boatload of characters. Paul did not skimp out at all on the characters in this. In fact, he left out some of the boys in this case. So we have a Big Mac with shock attack gun again. And this Big Mac with shock attack gun is actually going into the mech guns, which is really, really awesome to see. But mech guns not having AP and you not having something like Get Finder goggles to ignore cover is a big failure here. It's something that I would see as a failure and just a lack of tooling, but he's playing Green Tide, so he doesn't even have access to that. He's just straight up going, I'm going to hope that I can just blow these gits off the table. So, hey, he did it. Shout out to him. Then he has 3 Pain Boys, followed by 3 War Bosses. Each War Boss has an enhancement. One has Ruckus Warcaller, one has Brutal but Cunning, and one has Ferocious Show Off. So he paid for all 3 of the enhancements that he wanted, didn't hold back. And then 2 Weird Boys for that, followed by 3 20-man units. 5 20-man units of boys, 1 Gretchen unit, 1 commando unit, the mech guns that I spoke of earlier, and 2 units of storm boys. So he decided, I'm not paying for that big alternate killy unit like we've seen in some of the other Green Tide lists. For example, last week we've seen a Gargantuan Squigoth list. There's other times where people will bring Gazgul Thraka with their Green Tide list. I personally used to bring a Gazgul Thraka and Meganobs. A lot of people used to bring Meganobs as a whole. So in this case, he decided to bring Infiltration, probably to stop Affle striking, and to just being able to stage better, maybe even score secondaries better. So this is Green Tide list. I would say we could take this as a food for thought going forward. If you're running a Green Tide list, do you bring something for a hard counter punch? Or do you bring like another anvil, right? For the most part, are you going to bring a counter punch or just more boys again? Or flash kits or mech guns like he brought. So there's something for us to think about. I wanted this more as an experiment or a thought idea for the community and people to look at as a whole. Right now we have Gabriel said, the update pendulum swings both ways. I hope we can get some buffs next update. Either way, we keep on crumping. Exactly. It swings both ways, and I think that's why it's best that we take a look at it, kind of gather the information, let people know, kind of where we're at, try to observe why we're where we are at, and make that known to GW. That way they can buff us in ways that are actually valuable. Not, make the pain boss go down 10 points and be like, we fixed it. See, like no one cared about that. You guys are tripping. So let's take a look at my boy Paul Martin's path to victory. So Paul Martin, like I said, he did end up going 4-2-1. So let's take a look real quick at his matchup. As for his first game, he did win this one going into the Necron Canoptic Court. So that's interesting. Canoptic Court still had somewhat teeth, especially for something like Green Tide. So we have Chronomancer, Catan Shard, Knight of the Void Dragon, Scorpec Lord, Technomancer, Immortals, 3 units of Doomstalkers, a Scarab Swarm, 2 units of Wraiths, just big bricked up Wraiths, Death Marks, 2 Locust Heavy Destroyer, and then a 3-man unit of Scorpec Destroyers. So some good killing potential from those destroyers here. Good killing potential with these Scorpec Doomstalkers. Not necessarily the best into Orks. Boys, obviously, because these are like more high damage of damage, 5 damage. I think 3 they are. But they do all right. Immortals do as well. But something like a Void Dragon doesn't really like to see a bunch of boys, not really killing them. It comes down to, can the boys beat up something like something like the Wraith, yes, and they can actually take them out on OC. How the boys can beat them up is rerolling wounds, which is actually very valuable into something like Wraiths because they hate a bunch of damage one. Or you can simply hero epic challenge out those characters in this case, right? So even though most of the time people like to hide their characters in the Wraiths and put them behind a building high, you can't see them. When you're running 20-man units of boys, you can end up swinging your boys in a way that your boys fill up all the space and your character can hopefully kind of try to move out closer to the enemy character and bounce out and kill him even. Not always able to be done, but it can be done, and that would actually help in this matchup. So shout out to him for taking out Canoptic Court. Nobody likes the Canoptic Court. No, I'm just kidding. Then he had his second matchup. This was actually his tie, which he went into the Chaos Soulforge Warp Pack. So I actually like to see that. We have a Dark Commune, a Warp Smith, a cultist mob, a cursed cultist unit. Very annoying for their odd wounds. They have guys that have 3 wounds, guys that have single wounds. Very annoying, kind of tough unit. Kind of killy too to a certain degree. Chaos Bikers, 1-2 units of those. 2 units of Chaos and Vindicators. These guys are annoying to try to shoot. Not that we're going to necessarily shoot them, but we did see that he does have a shooting kind of unit on here with the shock attack gun and the custom air cannon. The fact that the Chaos Vindicator can pop smoke and armor of contempt and have light cover, it just means that it's taking great saves. Very, very versatile weapon. You guys should be aware of these. Good damage output for them as well. 3 Forge Fiends with ectoplasma cannons, Mauler Fiend, 2 units of Raptors, a Venom Callers, and a Demonette. Not the most meta version of Soul Forge pack, but a really respectable version of it. And you would see actually Venom Crawlers, because these guys can get sustain 5+ or lethal 5+. In this case, I'm not sure which pack he's taking, but because they have strength 6 weapons, they can put stupid volume onto your boy mob infantry unit. So can something like Forge Fiends with these ectoplasma guys as well. And the Vindicators, because they're dark packing, because they can get +1 to wound and weird stuff like that, they can actually make these vehicles put a respectable amount of damage into those mobs of boys, and they're really not dying because, like I said, Vindicators having a 2-up armor save, and they can do armor of contempt. These Forge Fiends are staying far back away from these mobs, but that's where you have to hope that you could just get where you need to get with those big bricks of boys. I do think this is a winnable matchup for something like a Green Tide list. That's why I thought it was kind of interesting. He did tie it, but this is winnable because he could take the middle of the table. His biggest threats here are the Accursed Cultist unit, the Vindicators, because if they tag them, they just keep shooting their blast in combat and kind of hold the boy mob unit in place, because the boy mob wants to tag other things. They want to tag like the Forge Fiends and stuff like that, but if it tags just the Vindicators, they can hold them, and then the Mauler Fiends in there too. So it was actually a quite winnable game, but there was just some things that kind of seemed to not go his way, but a very winnable game. And Forge Fiends, the Dark Sword, the Soul Forge pack does crazy damage, so that was a respectable game outcome, even though he didn't win. 78-point tie there. Great job. Then his third game where he wins here, he goes into, remember, he's playing the Nerf Green Tide guys, right? And he's going 100 boys, commandos, and a buttload of characters. He's going Death Guard for the smell check. He has a Lord of Contagion, Mortarion, Tallyman, Typhus, 1-2 units of Cultist. He has 1-2 units of Predator Destructors with the autocannons. These are common, will be becoming quite a bit more common with Death Guard. When they pick this, they're looking to reduce your AP, reduce your armor save by 1 as their contagion. And then they want to add another AP and with their stratagems and such like that, so they can make their autocannons reliable into elite infantry. In our case, he doesn't have any of that, so it's a combo he's not really going to be looking at. Then he has 2 units of Death Shrouds, which are pretty solid. They have Plague anti-infantry kind of pistol flamers. They have sweep attacks, pretty solid into Orks. 2 unit of drones, Nurglings, Erotigus, and then 3 Carnivores. And Carnivores, pretty scary if you're elite infantry, but honestly, for Orc boy units, they're not killing Orc boy units that well. Neither is Rodriguez or even Mortarion. So this is where it's just straight up Mortarion, Rodriguez, carnivores, and those 3 Terminators are looking to pick up 100 boys. And if they can do it fast enough, because they're losing on primary and OC for the most part when they are fighting with them. So he can kill them, like we talked about before, being able to reroll wounds. He has the souped up war bosses and all these detachments, so some of them actually can wound those carnivores properly and try to tear them down much quicker than they would be expecting. He does have the Nurglings in here, so we don't know. Did he choose to make make Orcs -2 to hit? That'd be a big factor, but luckily all the he has 3 war bosses for his big units of boys, so he can at least put the damage into this. This is just be that the Death Guard player doesn't realize how much combined arms it takes to kill the boys, and he has such big units with big bases and such that they might just get in the way, right? I can just pull away from Rodriguez and not let him kind of pile in or something, right? He's just so big and fat. So you can see how that could go, but reliable, respectable win there, because Death Guard are one of our hardest matchups, and he ended up winning the 3rd round Death Guard matchup. But from here is where he kind of faces his struggle. So he loses next 2 games, and he loses his next game, his 4th game, to Astromil Tom, which is notoriously known hard for Orcs right now. We have Lord Solar Leontis, Plume Command Squad, Tank Commander, followed by Cadians, Catachan, Double Chimeras, Adelan Rough Riders. We have 1, 2 units, just 5 men of those. 3 Basilisks, which is super horrific for Orcs because they're reducing their movement with this. Oh my god, shell shocking these boys. 2 units of Bulgrin. Bulgrin actually can tank the power claws of the unit, and they have the profiles to beat up Orcs in response, so that actually does kind of suck for them. Then 2 units of Demolishers, which are just great offensive profiles. So this is just rough for Orcs. Rough Riders can run in, do some good melee potential. Chimeras can hold them in place. Bulgrins can fight. Catachans can come in early and hold them back. I hope that they would, because you can give them free charges. So if he was dumb enough to give them away, that's fine. I don't think he did. The Orc player did have commandos as well. But this is just a hard matchup for the Orc player, just because they have the ability to beat you up with the Bulgrin, the volume between their tanks and their Basilisks. They can slow you down and then actually hit you and charge you first with some of your units, or just piecemeal your army out because you're getting Basilisks to death. 41 points win there for the Orc player. Ended up losing that one. Very tough matchup. He had to deal with triple Basilisks, Bulgrins, and everything. So, ooh, nasty. And then he had to do Blood Angel, Sons of Sanguinius. Oh my gosh, the chain swords. So we have Captain, Chaplain, Lamartis. We have 2 units of Assault Intercessors, 2 Impulsors, Rhino, 3 units of Assault Intercessors with Jump Hacks. So all of those guys, strength 6 chain swords, baby, for all of your green tide boys. 2 Ball Predators enjoying the green tide right there. 2 units of Death Company Marines, Power Fist right there. Winning all those boys on 2s and saying, this is rough. 1 unit of Death Company with Jump Hack, Infiltrator, and then Scout. So like we said, he pretty much has all the volume and killing potential to chew through a green tide list. Rough to see, but it is what it is, and that's kind of how the green tide list is kind of looking right now, and he lost right there. I think this perfectly represents shout out to Paul, right? Perfectly represents what you can kind of expect going into a green tide kind of army and how you're going. He went 2-2-1, and that one was against another pretty much skew odd data sheet matchup, it being a Chaos Demon Soul Forged Demon Engine pack list, and in that case he really could have won that matchup too. So was expecting to go pretty much 3-2 or 2-3 is where you can expect to go if you're running a green tide. Some people are simply just going to have the damage output if it's between shooting or delaying your movement or delaying your potential to score, or they're straight up going to just kill your ass with Blood Angels, for example, of green tide as well. So I do think green tide could use a little bit of buffing here. Nexus is kind of already not beneficial for them, so GW can go back and kind of buff it up a little bit. I think this was a great run by Paul Martin. Sorry I didn't put your name in this. Yeah, I should have put it in here. But this is where I think you can expect to go with your green tide list, and it's really respectable. You can beat some good matchups here. You can have some fun games with all your whole mobs of boys, and it makes you. Green Tide is one of those detachments that you really should get practice playing with it if you want to play it regularly, because playing it with enough time, proficiency, movement correctly, tagging things correctly, stuff like that is how you become good with it, not just its rules. So getting good with it now, while it's not optimal with rules, will be beneficial for you when the rules do get increased, made better, points, whatever it may be. So shout out to my boy Paul Martin for the Green Tide. Whoa! So everybody, before I close out here, I just want to say that yes, Orks are in a bad spot. As a whole, we do struggle into 2-up armor save. We struggle into high toughness skews. We struggle into these 3-inch deep strike shenanigans between demons, Chaos Marine, Grey Knights, Hyper Crypt, Pariah Nexus. Secret missions can be harder for newer Orc learning players, where people just simply score it against them. They spend all their time with their board control, and then they just simply still lose because of secret mission. So I can understand why newer Orc players are kind of getting frustrated. What I would say is this is the perfect time to get up your hobby. I personally, I'm working on another kill rig. I'm putting together more of my squigs kind of in case they do come down in points as well. So how people run towards what they think is strong when you're playing in the time period where your detachment's weak, it's good that you run towards what you like, because in the hopes that it does change or become more beneficial, you already have it up hobbying painted it. You already have become familiar with it, even when it was less proficient. Therefore, you're better as a general and you're more happy overall. So like always, paint whatever you want, play with what you should. That's the strength of our codex as a whole, because as you can see, all of the detachments are doing roughly about as well as each other from week to week. Some people pop out and doing great with Dread Mob. Somebody does good with Cult of Speed. Somebody beats up on a team event with the Hunt. Another person does great with War Horde. So really, Orcs are on a learning curve. Win path is a huge factor for us. So if you have a hard weekend, don't beat yourself up. Just know that Orcs are truly never been, and you can always get stuck in again. So one thing to keep in mind, is that we have our paint competition. We do have, more content that we're kind of working on, which are going to be fun, either battle report summaries, and or maybe even a lore stuff. So just keep around. Thank you for supporting us. Also, shout out to our objective markers. So pick those up, give them a look if you haven't, because they're actually pretty sick and good quality. Love them. So shout out to all you guys in the community. I appreciate you gets. Let's keep those guys working and keep those detachments running, boys, because there's still stuff to answer, right? I still need a champion to rise for Cult of Speed and singles. All right. So with all that in mind, with all that said, there's one thing to keep in mind is don't cross the wall, because we knock your teeth out. Whoa.